Major John Mitchell stood at the viewport of Defense Station Orion, watching Earth rotate slowly beneath him. The blue planet looked peaceful from this distance, its oceans and landmasses partially hidden by swirling white clouds. Sometimes he forgot how beautiful it was. "Major, the Calvar ship is requesting docking clearance," said Lieutenant Kate Wilson from her station. John nodded. "Standard protocol. Escort them to the diplomatic sector. Remember, they don't set foot on the station proper." "Yes, sir," Kate replied, her fingers already moving across her control panel. The Calvar were one of 7 alien species humans had met since developing faster-than-light travel 30 years ago. Tall, with iridescent scales and 4 arms, they were skilled traders and diplomats in the Galactic Concord. They were also intensely curious, always pushing boundaries. John checked his watch. His shift ended in 4 hours, and then he could call Lisa and Alice. His wife and 8-year-old daughter lived in New Boulder, a small community nestled in what used to be the Rocky Mountains. He missed them terribly during his 3-month rotations on the defense station. "You seem distracted today," said Colonel Paul Evans, stepping up beside him. "Just thinking about home," John replied. "Alice has her school performance this weekend. I promised I'd watch the live stream." Hall nodded sympathetically. "The price we pay, right? Someone has to guard the line." The line. That's what they called Earth's defensive perimeter. The one absolute, non-negotiable rule humanity had established when joining the Galactic Concord. Earth remained untouched by alien presence. No visitors, no embassies, no research teams. Not even on humanitarian missions. To the rest of the galaxy, it seemed strange, perhaps even paranoid. Humans freely traveled to alien worlds, established colonies on 17 planets, and welcomed alien visitors to those colonies. But Earth was sacred. John made his way to the diplomatic sector for the scheduled meeting. Ambassador Diane Rogers was already there, her gray suit crisp and professional as she prepared to greet the Calvar delegation. "Major Mitchell," she acknowledged with a smile. "Ready for another round of Calvar questions." "As ready as I'll ever be, Ambassador." The airlock cycled, and 3 Calvar entered. Their leader, Zixtar, bowed slightly in the human custom they had adopted for these meetings. "Ambassador Rogers, Major Mitchell, we bring greetings and trade proposals from the Calvar Confederacy." The meeting proceeded smoothly through the usual diplomatic exchanges. Trade routes were discussed, minor border disputes resolved, scientific data shared. But as the formal agenda concluded, Zixtar tilted his elongated head in what John had come to recognize as their expression of curiosity. "Ambassador, if I may ask a personal question." Diane nodded carefully. "You may ask." "Our scientists have been studying the historical data you shared about Earth's development. It appears to be a planet of remarkable diversity, with ecosystems unlike any in charted space. Yet you guard it so zealously. Your species has spread to many worlds. Why is this one planet so sacred that none may even visit?" John tensed slightly. This wasn't the first time an alien species had asked this question, and it wouldn't be the last. Diane smiled, her expression giving away nothing. "Some boundaries exist for others' protection, not ours." Zixtar's upper arms made a gesture of confusion. "You speak as if your world presents some danger. Our scans detect nothing unusual." "And that's exactly how we prefer it," John interjected. "Earth remains as it is. The rule is absolute." After the Calvar left, Diane turned to John with a sigh. "They'd never stop asking, do they?" "Would you?" John replied. "Tell someone they can never, ever visit your homeworld without explaining why. And what do you expect?" "I expect them to respect our boundaries," she said firmly. "The alternative is unthinkable." John returned to his post, a familiar unease settling in his stomach. For 30 years, all species had respected humanity's one rule. But he sometimes wondered how long that respect would last, and what would happen when someone inevitably broke it. The alarm would come 3 days later. The alarm blared through Admiral Greg Peters' quarters at exactly 300 hours. He was awake and reaching for his uniform before the automated system could finish its announcement. Alert. Security breach in Earth defense perimeter. All command staff report to stations. Greg pulled on his boots and was out the door in under a minute. The corridor of Defense Station Orion was filled with personnel rushing to their posts, faces tense with a mixture of disbelief and determination. No one had ever breached the defense perimeter. Not in 30 years. The command center buzzed with activity when Greg arrived. Major John Mitchell was already there, standing at the main display with Lieutenant Kate Wilson. Report, Greg ordered, his voice cutting through the noise. Kate pointed to the screen. Sir, a Vraxian scout ship bypassed the outer warning beacons 43 minutes ago. They ignored all hails and proceeded directly to Earth orbit. Greg stared at the small red dot circling Earth on the display. The Vraxians were the newest species to join the Galactic Concord, known for their scientific curiosity and somewhat dismissive attitude toward what they called primitive cultural taboos. Current status. They're deploying something, Kate said, her fingers flying over her console. Small objects, sir. I count 12. No, 13. Automated probes from their energy signatures. John stepped forward. They're heading for different continental masses. Dispersal pattern suggests they're targeting diverse biomes. Get me that ship, Greg ordered. The main screen flickered, and a Vraxian appeared. Their pale blue skin and large, multifaceted eyes gave them an insect-like appearance despite their otherwise humanoid form. This is Admiral Peters of Earth Defense Command. You have entered restricted space. Recall your probes immediately and withdraw. The Vraxian blinked several times, compound eyes shifting color slightly. I am Science Director Vextra. We mean no harm. We merely wish to study your biological diversity. Your world contains evolutionary patterns, unlike any we've documented. Greg's face hardened. Your intentions are irrelevant. Earth is off-limits to all non-human presence. This is our only and final warning. Admiral, surely scientific knowledge benefits all species. Our probes are non-intrusive. Target and neutralize those probes, Greg ordered, cutting the transmission. Kate nodded. Defense platforms activating. Intercept vectors calculated. On the screen, small blue dots representing Earth's orbital defense systems moved to intercept the descending probes. One by one, they winked out. 9 neutralized, Kate reported. 3 have entered the atmosphere, too deep for clean interception. Greg closed his eyes briefly. 3 probes, 3 contamination points. Locations: Northern Australia, Central Brazil, and Equatorial Africa. John stepped forward. Sir, ground teams can be deployed within the hour. Greg nodded. Do it. Complete containment protocol. Nothing leaves those sites. He turned to his communications officer. Contact Ambassador Rogers. Tell her to convene an emergency session of the Concord Assembly and prepare the diplomatic package. The diplomatic package, sir? The young officer asked, eyes widening. Yes, the Vraxians need to understand what they've done. Later, alone in his office, Greg opened a secure channel to Earth's unified command. The stern face of General Olivia Clark appeared on his screen. Is it confirmed? She asked without preamble. Yes, 3 contact points. Ground teams are en route. But we both know it's too late, she finished. How long do we have? Greg consulted the projection a scientist had sent him minutes earlier. First signs within 48 hours, full manifestation within a week. General Clark's expression didn't change, but her eyes grew harder. Implement Protocol Omega. All civilian travel between Earth and off-world colonies is suspended. Prepare for quarantine procedures. What about the Vraxians? Ambassador Rogers will handle that part. They broke our one rule, Admiral. Now they'll understand why it existed. As Greg ended the transmission, his gaze drifted to the viewport and the blue planet beyond. Soon, it wouldn't look so peaceful anymore. On Earth, in the small community of New Boulder, Lisa Mitchell received the alert on her comm unit just as she was preparing breakfast for Alice. The message was simple. Protocol Omega initiated. All civilians remain in designated safety zones until further notice. She stared at the message, then looked out the window at the mountains. For the first time in her life, she was afraid of her own planet. The Emergency Concord Assembly convened 24 hours after the breach. Representatives from all 7 alien species gathered in the great circular chamber aboard Concord Station, their faces showing varying degrees of concern and confusion. Ambassador Diane Rogers entered with a small team of human officials. Her expression was calm but cold as she took her place at the human delegation's table. Across the chamber, 5 Vraxian representatives huddled together, their blue skin paler than usual. Trazanil, the elderly Ardavian representative who had known humans longest, called the session to order. His voice was grave as he addressed the assembly. We gather under unfortunate circumstances. The Vraxian Science Directorate has violated the primary covenant established with humanity upon their joining the Concord. Science Director Vextra stood. We meant no harm. Our probes were purely scientific. Silence. Diane interrupted, her voice cutting through the chamber like a blade. You were warned. Every species in this Concord was informed of our single demand. Earth remains untouched. Colonel Paul Evans stepped forward with a data tablet. 9 of the 12 probes were neutralized before atmospheric entry. 3 reached the surface: Australia, Brazil, and Central Africa. Vextra's compound eyes shifted nervously. They are simple collection devices. They will cause no damage to your ecosystems. You know nothing of our ecosystems, Diane replied. For 50 years, we have maintained peaceful relations with all Concord species. Our single request, our one demand, was that Earth remain untouched. The Vraxian Science Directorate has violated this covenant. Trasnil shifted uncomfortably in his seat. Ambassador Rogers, perhaps you should explain to the younger species why this boundary exists. The Vraxians joined the Concord only 11 cycles ago. They cannot comprehend what they've done without understanding. Diane looked at the oldest alien ally humans had made. You know why, Trasnil. Your people learned the hard way, on that research station orbiting Mars. The ancient Ardavian skin darkened in what humans had come to recognize as their version of a solemn knot. 27 of my people died, but the containment protocols worked. The station was sterilized. A murmur went through the chamber. The younger species had heard rumors of the Mars incident, but never the full story. Diane turned back to the Vraxian delegation. You have 24 hours to recall all personnel from your outposts in human-controlled space. We suggest your colonies near human territories be evacuated as well. Evacuated. Vextra stood up straighter, compound eyes flashing with alarm. This is an extreme overreaction to a simple scientific mission. No, Diane replied quietly. This is the only warning you will receive. Without another word, the human delegation stood and left the chamber. The silence that followed was deafening. After several moments, Krelak, the representative of the warlike Kari, leaned toward the confused Vraxians. His voice was a low growl. You fools. You have no idea what you've awakened. Back on her ship, Diane met with her team. Are the quarantine protocols in place? Yes, Ambassador, replied her aide. All human vessels are withdrawing from mixed species stations. The colony evacuation alerts have been sent. And Earth. Colonel Evans brought up a series of images on the main screen. They showed teams in sealed containment suits working around 3 sites on Earth. But the images also showed something else. Plants near the probe landing sites were changing, their leaves darkening and growing at visible rates. In Australia, local wildlife was behaving strangely, moving in unnatural patterns. It's happening faster than we predicted, Evans said. The Vraxian probes must have carried something that accelerated the process. Diane closed her eyes briefly. How long until full manifestation? At this rate, 3 days, maybe less. She nodded grimly. Then the Vraxians have less time than we told them. Send the alert to all human ships. Execute Protocol Omega. Phase 2. What about the other species? The innocent ones. Diane looked out the viewport at the Concorde station slowly rotating against the backdrop of stars. They should have stopped the Vraxians. Now they'll all learn why some rules should never be broken. Lieutenant Ben Harper stood at the viewing deck of the Dreadnought Liberty, watching as hundreds of human warships formed up around Earth. In his 15 years of service, he had never seen such a massive fleet assembled. Ships of every size moved into defensive positions, from small, fast interceptors to enormous carriers and dreadnoughts. Quite a sight, isn't it? Captain Susan Miller said, stepping up beside him. Ben nodded. I never thought I'd see the day. The entire Earth Defense Fleet. Not just the Defense Fleet, Susan corrected. Every combat-capable human vessel in the sector has been recalled. This is the largest mobilization in human history. Ben's stomach tightened. Is it really that bad? Susan's face was grim. Worse. Have you seen the latest reports from the surface? Before Ben could answer, his comm unit beeped. Lieutenant Harper to the bridge. Priority message from Earth Command. On the bridge, Admiral Peters' face filled the main screen. The Admiral looked like he hadn't slept in days. Captain Miller, your vessel is assigned to Perimeter Defense Group 3. You will prevent any non-human ships from approaching Earth. Use lethal force if necessary. Susan straightened. Understood, Admiral. What about the evacuation? Proceeding as planned. We've already moved 60% of essential personnel to the lunar colonies. The Admiral's expression darkened. But most civilians won't make it off-world in time. After the transmission ended, Ben returned to his station. His thoughts drifted to his parents in Chicago. The evacuation orders had prioritized government officials, scientists, and military families. Ordinary civilians were last on the list. On Earth, Lisa Mitchell watched the sky from her backyard in New Boulder. Strange lights had been visible after sunset for the past 2 nights. The massive fleet gathering in orbit. The local news had stopped broadcasting yesterday, replaced by a steady stream of emergency instructions. Mom. Alice stood in the doorway, clutching her favorite stuffed animal. When is Dad coming home? Lisa forced a smile. Soon, honey. Remember what we talked about. We need to stay inside for a while. It's like a big storm is coming. Alice nodded solemnly. But it's not really a storm, is it? Lisa pulled her daughter close. No, it's not. But your father is working to keep us safe. Her comm unit beeped with a new alert. All citizens in zones 12 through 47. Remain indoors. Seal all windows and doors. Do not attempt to leave your designated safety zones. In his private quarters aboard Defense Station Orion, Admiral Peters reviewed the historical protocol established for this exact scenario. The file was simply labeled Proportional Response Doctrine. It had been drafted by the original United Earth government and updated only once since first contact. He scrolled through the document, past the containment procedures, past the evacuation priorities, to the final section. In the event of full manifestation, if containment fails, the Admiral closed the file. He couldn't bring himself to read the rest. Colonel Samantha Lee, head of biological defense, entered his office without knocking. Her face told him everything before she spoke. The Australian site, sir. The containment team. They're gone. Dead? No. Change. She placed a tablet on his desk. The video footage showed men and women in containment suits moving strangely, working together with local wildlife to build something. The same is happening in Brazil and Africa, she continued. It's spreading faster than the models predicted. The Vraxian probes contain some kind of catalysts that accelerated the process. How long until it reaches populated areas? Hours, not days. And sir, she hesitated, we're detecting strange activity in the oceans too. The marine ecosystems are responding. Admiral Peters stared at the blue planet visible through his viewport. Earth had always been beautiful, seen from space. Initiate Phase 3, he said quietly, and get me a direct line to the Vraxian homeworld. Sir, they should see what they've unleashed before it reaches them. On the surface below, the forests of Brazil were moving, animals and plants working together in impossible harmony. Birds carried seeds that grew at impossible speeds, forming strange new structures. In the Australian outback, kangaroos and dingoes moved in coordinated patterns, no longer predator and prey but parts of a single emerging system. Earth was awakening. Trasnil, the elderly Ardavian representative, requested an urgent private meeting with the Vraxian science director. They met in a small conference room aboard Concorde Station, away from the panicked activity that had overtaken the diplomatic sectors. You must understand what humans have been protecting the galaxy from, Trasnil said, his voice low and strained. I am perhaps the only non-human alive who witnessed the Mars incident firsthand. Science Director Vextra's compound eyes shifted nervously. We detected nothing dangerous in Earth's biosphere, only remarkable biodiversity. Because you don't know what to look for, Trasnil replied. His normally blue-gray skin had paled to an ashen color. Earth evolved in isolation for over 4 billion years. Its biosphere contains evolutionary mechanisms unlike anything in known space. All life evolves, Vextra argued. Not like this. Trasnil activated a small device, projecting a hologram between them. This is what happened on Mars Research Station 50 years ago, before your species even knew humans existed. A hologram showed alien scientists working in a laboratory. A small sample container was visible, labeled Earth Soil Sample, Amazon Basin. We were curious, just like you, Trasnil continued. A human scientific delegation had visited our homeworld. One of our researchers secretly collected cellular material from them. Just skin cells. Nothing invasive. The hologram showed the sample being combined with the soil. We wanted to see how Earth's microbes would interact with cells from humans who had adapted to live among the stars. Trasnil's voice grew hollow. What we didn't understand was that Earth's microbiome contains over 4 billion years of evolutionary warfare. Its viruses, bacteria, fungi, they adapt faster than any in known space. The hologram showed the sample changing, growing, spreading through the laboratory despite containment efforts. The humans themselves carry thousands of dormant pathogens their bodies have learned to control. They call it their immune system. It's actually a negotiated peace with trillions of microorganisms. Vextra watched in horror as the hologram showed Ardavian scientists falling ill, their bodies changing in disturbing ways. The humans came for us. They destroyed the station, sterilized the area. They saved most of us. Trasnil touched a scared patch on his neck. I was one of the lucky ones. But our probes, Vextra began, voice faltering. Your probes sampled Earth's biological material and exposed it to alien compounds. You've triggered what humans call adaptive acceleration. Their planet is now treating all non-Earth life as invaders. On the Vraxian homeworld, Science Minister Zolnak received the first emergency transmission from their research outpost on Proxima Centauri b. The message was fragmented, filled with static. Unknown pathogen. Spreading rapidly. Subject physiology altering. Request immediate quarantine. Too late for evacuation. The transmission cut off abruptly. Within hours, similar reports came from every Vraxian facility in human space. Aboard the Liberty, Lieutenant Ben Harper received new orders. All human personnel are to withdraw from mixed-species facilities. Full decontamination protocols in effect for any human who had contact with non-Earth life forms in the past 90 days. Dr. Ryan Carter, Earth's leading xenobiologist, explained to Unified Earth Command. The Vraxian probes created a bridge. Earth's microbiome is now adapting to alien biology at an exponential rate. It's like an immune response, but planet-wide. On his screen, images showed the affected areas on Earth expanding. The changed regions now covered nearly 10% of Earth's surface. Plants, animals, Even the soil itself had transformed, working together as if controlled by a single mind. "Can we stop it?" asked General Clark. Dr. Carter shook his head. "No, but we might be able to direct it." In her home in New Boulder, Lisa Mitchell watched as the trees at the edge of their property began to change. The leaves were darkening, branches growing visibly, reaching toward each other to form strange, intricate patterns. Birds circled above, moving in perfect synchronization. She pulled Alice away from the window. "We need to go to the basement now, honey." Lisa saw something in her daughter's eyes that made her blood run cold, a faint green shimmer that hadn't been there yesterday. "Alice, did you go outside yesterday? Tell me the truth." Alice looked down. "Just for a minute. A butterfly came to my window. It was so pretty, with green wings. I just wanted to touch it." Lisa's hand trembled as she touched her daughter's forehead. It was warm, but not feverish. "It's okay," she whispered, holding her daughter close. "Everything will be okay." But she knew it wouldn't be. Earth was changing. And now, so was Alice. The Vraxian homeworld fell into chaos as the first reports of infection reached the general population. In the capital city, crowds filled the streets, demanding answers from their leaders. Emergency ships launched constantly, carrying those wealthy or connected enough to secure passage away from the planet. Science Minister Zolmak stood before the High Council, his blue skin pale with fear. "The containment has failed. Every Vraxian facility within 3 light-years of human space reports the same pattern. The pathogen adapts to our countermeasures within hours." "How many dead?" asked First Minister Vatok. "Unknown. Many aren't dying. They're changing. Some lose higher brain functions. Others develop new capabilities. All become carriers." A message alert flashed on the council chamber's main screen. "Incoming transmission from Earth Command." Admiral Peters' face appeared on the screen. His expression was not angry, but deeply sad. "First Minister, I regret to inform you that quarantine protocols have failed at 6 of your research stations. The contagion is spreading faster than predicted." "You did this," Vatok shouted. "You've unleashed some kind of biological weapon." Admiral Peters shook his head. "No, you did this when you violated our one rule. Earth wasn't protected because we feared alien influence. It was quarantined to protect you from it." On the screen behind the Admiral, footage showed strange transformations occurring on Earth's surface. Forests had merged into massive interconnected structures. Animals moved in patterns that suggested intelligence beyond their natural abilities. Even the oceans glowed with new bioluminescent life. "Earth evolved in isolation for billions of years," Peters continued. "Its biology developed adaptation mechanisms unlike anything in the galaxy. The microorganisms there exist in a careful balance that took millions of years to establish. We humans are part of that balance. We evolved alongside those organisms, developed defenses against them." He gestured to a scientist off-screen. "Dr. Carter can explain better than I can." Dr. Ryan Carter stepped into view. "Your probes disturbed the balance. Worse, they introduced alien biological markers that Earth's biosphere has never encountered. Now it's responding the way it always has to invasive threats, by adapting, evolving, fighting back, but without the normal constraints of time." "Can it be stopped?" Vatok asked, voice barely audible. "Not completely," Dr. Carter replied. "But we're implementing measures to slow the spread. We've developed a treatment that helps resistant alien species. We're sending you the formula now." After the transmission ended, First Minister Vatok turned to his council. "How many of our people can we evacuate beyond the spread?" "Perhaps 10%, came the grim reply. On the Liberty, Lieutenant Ben Harper watched as specialized ships departed Earth's orbit, carrying scientists and their equipment to the outer colonies. Each vessel underwent rigorous decontamination procedures before being allowed to leave. "Will the treatment work?" he asked Captain Miller. "It will help," she replied. "But the doctor says it's more like managing a chronic condition than a cure." The affected species will never be the same. In her underground laboratory on Luna, Dr. Samantha Lee worked frantically with her team, studying samples from Earth. The changed biological material displayed properties that defied conventional understanding. The integration is near perfect, she told Admiral Peters over a secure channel. Plant, animal, microbial. They're functioning as a single system now, and it's getting smarter. What about the affected humans? Dr. Lee hesitated. They're becoming part of it too, but differently. They retain their identities, their memories. They're like interfaces between us and the new system. Is it hostile? Not exactly. It's defensive. It identified the alien probes as threats and responded. Now it's preparing for more threats. In New Boulder, Lisa Mitchell sat beside her daughter's bed. Alice's skin had developed a faint green pattern, almost like delicate leaf veins. Her fever had broken hours ago, and now she slept peacefully. The window showed the transformed landscape outside. The town was unrecognizable, encased in strange, organic structures that pulsed with life. Yet oddly, nothing had harmed their house or attempted to enter. Lisa's comm unit buzzed. The message was from John. Evac team coming. Hold on. I love you both. Mom, Alice said, her voice normal despite her changed appearance. I can hear them. All of them. The trees, the birds, the earth itself. Are you scared, honey? Lisa asked. Alice smiled. No, they're not angry at us. We're part of them. They're just scared of the others. The ones who don't belong. The aliens. Alice nodded. They broke the rule. Now Earth is making sure they never do it again. 3 years later, Major John Mitchell stood with his wife Lisa and daughter Alice on the observation deck of Lunar Colony Armstrong. They looked down at the blue-green sphere of Earth, now streaked with new patterns visible even from space. Strange, luminous structures covered large portions of the continents, and the oceans glowed in places with bioluminescent life. Will we ever be able to go home? Alice asked, pressing her hand against the thick glass. The faint green patterns on her skin had become permanent, like delicate tattoos tracing her veins. Someday, John answered, putting his arm around her shoulders. The scientists say Earth's biosphere is stabilizing again. Another decade, maybe 2. Lisa leaned against her husband. It's beautiful, in a strange way. And it was. Earth had transformed, but not destroyed itself. The new growth had spread rapidly at first, then slowed as it reached a new equilibrium. Now it pulsed with life, different, but still recognizably Earth. Across the galaxy, the aftermath of what people now call the Earth event continued to reshape civilizations. The Vraxian species had suffered catastrophic losses. Nearly 40% of their population had succumbed to the initial wave of infection before the human treatment protocols could be implemented. Their remaining colonies existed under strict quarantine, their people forever changed by the adaptive pathogens. Other species had been affected to lesser degrees, depending on their proximity to human space and contact with Vraxian outposts. The Galactic Concord itself had survived, but in an altered form. Ambassador Diane Rogers, now heading the newly formed Human Containment Directorate, met with representatives of the surviving species. The meeting room on Concord Station had been specially designed with quarantine barriers between each delegation. We mourn with you for what was lost, Diane said, her voice carrying to all present. We warned you of the danger, yet we still feel responsible. The Ardavian Traz Nil, one of the few original representatives still serving, nodded solemnly. The galaxy has learned a costly lesson. Some boundaries exist for a reason. What of the changed ones? Asked the new Vraxian representative, one of the survivors who had received early treatment. Her skin bore patterns similar to Alice's, though blue rather than green. Those with minor adaptations, like your people, will live long lives, Diane replied. Those more deeply changed have found purpose working with our scientists to understand what happened. A new treaty was established that day. Earth would remain quarantined, not just from alien visitors, but from humans as well until the planetary immune response fully subsided. Humanity continued to thrive among the stars, now with a new level of respect from the galactic community. In his quarters aboard the command ship Guardian, Admiral Peters looked at the final casualty reports and closed the file. The document title read, "The Price of Curiosity. Final Assessment." He whispered to the empty room. "We warned them. God help us, we warned them." On Earth itself, the transformation continued at a slower pace. The changed ecosystem had developed a form of collective intelligence. It remembered the invasion and remained vigilant, but no longer aggressively expanded. Remote sensors showed wildlife moving in precise patterns, plants growing in mathematical sequences. Earth had become something new, not just a planet, but an organism. One morning a year later, Dr. Ryan Carter received a message from the monitoring station at New Boulder. The sensors there had detected something remarkable. The transformed structures around what had once been the Mitchell home were forming shapes. Not random patterns, but deliberate arrangements of leaves and branches that, when viewed from above, formed recognizable letters. "Alice come ho me, when ready." Dr. Carter smiled as he forwarded the message to Lunar Colony Armstrong. Perhaps the wait wouldn't be as long as they had feared. In the vastness of space, humanity's dual nature, creators and destroyers, healers and warriors, diplomats and defenders, had never been more apparent. They had not sought this conflict, but when their final rule was broken, the universe learned why some lines should never be crossed. Earth waited patiently for its children to return, changed but not forgotten. And the stars held their breath, watching the curious species that carried within them the seeds of both destruction and rebirth.